Now, for more on implications of being cut from the SWIFT banking system, I want to turn to John Quelch. John is Dean of the University of Miami's Herbert Business School. It's good to have you with us. Thanks very much. And there's a lot to get to, so I want to go right there. We've walked through, tried to explain to folks what SWIFT is. So what do you think of Russia's reaction so far? How will Moscow cope in the coming days and weeks ahead?
Well, an important point is that SWIFT is 11,000 or so banks. There are actually 300 of those that are Russian banks. And as your report pointed out, not all of these individual banks have yet been cut off from the SWIFT system. So at present, it's not a comprehensive exclusion of all Russian banks. And as your report indicated, two prominent banks, including Gazprom Bank, which handles the bulk of the energy transactions between Russia and the European Union, are still functioning within the SWIFT system. And the big conundrum for the European Union, of course, is that if they were to completely shut down the SWIFT system, it would be impossible for payment transfers to be made from the European Union to Russia for the energy flows that they rely on. So it's a little bit of a stalemate at the moment. There's more that could be done by the West to further squeeze the SWIFT system shutdown.
Well, John, looking at Gazprom Bank, how significant it is and how important, obviously, natural gas and oil will be, do you anticipate that perhaps SWIFT could also affect those two large banks that we were talking about that do so much business in natural gas and oil?
Well, it could come to that. However, the consequences in terms of European energy supply and prices would be very significant. And in addition, it's worth pointing out that the availability of substitute supply from, say, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or the United States even, alternative supplies simply cannot be put in place at the volume necessary to substitute for the flow out of Russia, which constitutes 40% of the oil consumption of the EU and about 27% of the natural gas.
Let's talk about what other banking options Russia has. Perhaps the Chinese system, could we see it lean more on that?
Well, you mentioned in your report both the Russian substitute SPFS and the Chinese system, the CIPS. The SPFS, the Russian system, has been largely an internal transfer system. It happens to handle around about 20% of the domestic transfers payments within Russia. But only as of April of last year did it really start trying to become more involved in international transfers. And it simply does not have the network to be able to do so. It does not have the network of banks to be able to do so, and any overseas bank that now decided it would tie up with the SPFS system would immediately come under scrutiny from SWIFT and potentially be excluded by SWIFT from its network. So this is not a feasible solution. And when we look at the CIPS, the CIPS, I think, is a much more formidable system than the SPFS at the moment. And it's really been designed to facilitate the yuan becoming more important as an international trading currency. What I imagine could happen is that the CIPS could be used to facilitate payments by China for the imports that it takes in from Russia. And it's worth noting that around about 20% of Russian oil exports do actually go to China. Right. But China will always be very cautious in this kind of situation, not wishing to overplay its hand and do so much to help Russia in this situation, that there is retribution from the West.
Now, clearly, many of the sanctions and such are aimed at Vladimir Putin and the country's oligarchs. But what about the Russian people? We've seen long lines at ATMs, the dramatic devaluation of the ruble, spike in interest rates. Is it to the point now where Russians could begin to push back against their government, saying, look, this is only going to get worse? And could that work?
It's hard to imagine that that could work, given the strength of the Russian government and its apparatus throughout the country. You know, it's inevitable, I'm afraid, that when these situations arise, the poorest of the poor are those who are most hurt. And of course, the collapse of the ruble does undermine the purchasing power of ordinary people, can lead to hyperinflation fairly quickly, which will further aggravate the economy and the daily lives of ordinary people. So the question is whether or not that's going to result in protest levels in the streets of Moscow and major cities that would be severe enough to undermine President Putin's regime. If the Ukrainian war is protracted and many thousands or tens of thousands of Russian families lose sons on the battlefield of Ukraine, that combined with the punishing poverty that will come with hyperinflation,
Yeah, I think you're
could
exactly
be enough
right.
to cause a problem.
Yeah, John Welch, we certainly appreciate your insight. Clearly a lot of pain and misery to go around in this conflict. Thank you for joining us. John Quelch, the Dean from the University of Miami's Herbert School of Business. Thank you very much.
Go Canes.